Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this program. Tonight, we'd like to discuss the issue of the ED2030 Agenda. And the essence of it is that Mnangagwa is planning to stay in power beyond 2028 elections. I've said on this program that ED2030 Agenda is a decoy. It's meant to draw attention away from two things. First of all, that Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections is therefore, per se, illegitimate. And the second reason is that Zanu PF knows that the issue of failure to hold free, fair, and credible election has been the biggest issue for the nation. And throwing this Agenda 2030 draws attention away from that. So he wants to hide the fact that he is illegitimate for rigging 2023, but he also wants to draw attention away from the fact that if we don't do anything about fixing this problem, Zanu PF will rig 2028. That is at the heart of the problem. Welcome to the program, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. Indeed, this ED2030 movement is a disguise. Because let's start from the beginning, how this came to be. So just after the 2023 elections, it was decided by Zanu PF that, ED was doing such a fantastic job that he deserved a term extension so that he can see through his whole vision. Well, that's what they say. But then ED himself has come out and said that he's a constitutionalist and he is going to see off his term with no extension, and that's about it. So it's difficult now to say, do we go with what the man says or do we go with what the party says? And it has caused now a lot of guessing, a lot of anticipation, anxiety. It's spanners in the works. And we know this is what Zanu PF is good at. Just throwing the spanner into the works and, you don't have the picture. And at the end of the day, they move whatever they need done, and they could change their mind at any point in time and say, oh no, it was just, something that we spoke about at our party, or at our Congress. And they are entitled to suggest, but if they're doing nothing about it, then you can't do anything. So this is the point where I think, we are spending so much time on dwelling on what ifs and could this happen, rather than dealing with something that we know is an issue, something that we know has been a problem for decades. And the problem is rigged elections. That is the problem.
if one wants to understand the history of what Mnangagwa is doing, one has got to go back to the party's history. The late Eddison Zvobgo once explained that when they were in Mozambique, they would be involved in a serious debate on a serious matter. And if these fellow comrades were losing the debate, they will accuse you of being a CIA agent. Just to avoid the substantive issues, he explained. This is at the heart of what we are looking at here. When Zanu PF got into power, they've been able to refine this Mozambique syndrome, as Zvobgo called it, into an art. Zanu PF, whenever it wants to avoid discussing the substantive issues, it will introduce meaningless issues. Absolutely meaningless. What has that got to do with it? Trivial matters, just to divert attention away from the issues that really matter. And when they got into power in 1980, they now had the state resources to make sure that whatever they are bringing onto the agenda to draw attention away from the substantive issues becomes the dominant issue. This we saw during the elections between 2000 and say about 2015, when the land redistribution issue became the big issue. And Zanu PF was able to force that onto the national agenda by making sure that the seizure of the white-owned farms happened during elections, conveniently. And if people try to ignore them and try to focus on, no, well, let's focus on free, fair, and credible elections, Zanu PF will jazz up the issue by making sure the farm invasions where there was a lot of violence involved. If you look at the history of the farm invasions in Zimbabwe, they happened, first of all, most of them happened during elections. And most of the violence also happened during elections. The white farmers were beaten, their farm workers were beaten, and some of their properties destroyed during elections. So that people will be focusing on the farm issue and not the fact that elections are being rigged. This is what is the same methodology, it's the same modus operandi that Zanu PF has used. And we should not be surprised that they picked this Agenda 2030 just at the critical time when Mnangagwa himself has been told, not only by the international community, but this time by SADC and the AU, that the 2023 elections were not free, fair, and credible. And this was his reaction when he was told that.
Vana vakatuka Zanu PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza unenge uchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti Zanu PF yakaipa, farai. You are doing correct things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelections anafamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
That is what Mnangagwa feared. And that is the reason why, within a few months after his election in 2023, he was already talking of extending his stay in power beyond 2028. You have not served your 5-year term. Why are you talking of how you should extend it? It was necessary for him to do that because he did not want the people to be talking about him having rigged the 2023 elections and him being illegitimate.
No, I think it is very important that, you have mentioned the warnings that Zanu PF has received, not only from the international community, but from SADC itself, about the problem of rigged elections. I personally remember, just after the extraordinary summit, in 2023, where, ED had actually attended. And coming out of that summit, you could see the sweat and the worry on the man's face. What had happened in closed doors, was something that must have shook, the guy in there. And we saw, the first question that Ruben Barwe asked was, did they want to bring up the Zimbabwe issue in this agenda? Did they try and he says yes, and then they went on to do a lot of PR work. I think SADC took a bold and firm stance to say, look, we have just had about enough of Zimbabwe's, flawed election. Clearly, we cannot continue on this path. We need to save the region. And that alone was a big, big statement. And unfortunately, it is very, very unfortunate that we have the most useless opposition out there. So many chances have been created. So many opportunities have been missed because they choose to dwell on any other issue. The issue of rigged elections is number one on SADC's agenda. It's number one problem in Zimbabwe's political issue, and that needs to be solved. Yet now, instead of the opposition standing and asking SADC for help, let's move forward together, they are busy pushing to say, let's fight the 2030. And obviously, the main reason why they are fighting 2030 is because they want elections in 2028. Elections that will be rigged. Elections that will be illegal. They will want to take part in that. This just leaves the likes of SADC perplexed and powerless to say, hold on a minute. We are trying to help these guys. We are trying to stop Zanu PF from rigging elections and not giving these same guys a fair chance. But what are they going to do? They are the ones that are actually pushing to continue participating in rigged elections. How do you help somebody that every time when you try and clean up, he goes and messes up even more? I think this is the biggest problem that we have. The most useless and corrupt and incompetent opposition out there.
One of the issues that Ben has referred to earlier on is how Zanu PF has, on one hand, tried to play down that ED2030 is not an issue. At least that's what Mnangagwa want to portray. On the other hand, they've been fueling it. Like I said, the supporters started singing they wanted ED to continue in office soon after the 2023 elections, sorry. And then the issue was further reinforced at the party congress in 2024. It was the #1 resolution. People did not even bother about all the other resolutions. That was the #1 resolution. And it was at that point that the party mobilized to push that resolution. It was only the arrival of the war veteran, the late now, blessed Geza, who threw the spanner in the works. Here is Geza being interviewed on that issue.
aiwaga mirani kutauri imwe zvinhu zvinoitika hani ndiri kutokutaurira kuratidza kuti hatina kupusaka because ndiri kutokutaurira kuti tozviziva takapusaka ndisikakutauriri zvese we'll deal with this situation at the appropriate time, but ndiri kutotaura kuti commander vamunangagwa, right, navachiwenga handidi, right, ngavadissolve polity bureau tikwane isu varidzi vechunhu, ngavadissolve cabinet inoti nana kazembe vana soda vanani havambozviutaka pane kupaniwa vana kambamuda vanani, why do you hate your comrades? Kune mageneral, kune retired CIO vakawanda, kune retired commissioners of police and other senior officers vakawanda havadiwe.
Maybe the president is looking at capacity and capability.
Bullshit. Vana grade 7 vane capacity and capability. Grade 7, oita busy yokuti nhasi aitwa minister of state mangwana provincial minister isiripo. We are not apologetic about it. Chinhu chedu ichi toda kutopinda noda kuti president vanipo zimota varipo chitoda mabodyguards ini.
But you've got your own cars. You've got a hotel at your house that you built in Sanyat. Why do you want all this?
I want to be rewarded as well, not to be used like a political condom all the time. I'm not a political condom. And urikona vana mahiya vaya vana vamwe
So when Mnangagwa, so-called resolution number 1, was being undermined, what did he do? He went all out to bribe war veterans, party officials with gifts. 2025 will be known as the year when the regime spent so much money and resources on bribes. Party officials were all given cars. Army, they were also given cars and many other gifts. War veterans, the same thing. The leaders in the war veterans, of course, got a bit more. But the ordinary war veteran, all they ever got was a bicycle. But nonetheless, this was gifts to bribe them to get them back on board to fight this so-called ED2030 agenda. And by the time the party held its party congress in Mutare, end of last year, Zanu PF felt they were back on track. And this was the party resolution at that Congress.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the delegates to the Zanu PF 22nd National People's Conference as follows. State of the party. On the state of the party, that whereas the 21st National People's Conference of Zanu PF held on 26 October 2024 in Bulawayo resolved as follows. In recognition of the extensive developmental milestones and the significant socio-economic progress achieved under the leadership of the President and First Secretary of Zanu PF, His Excellency Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, it is resolved that his term of office as President of the Republic of Zimbabwe be extended beyond 2028 to 2030. The party and government are therefore directed to initiate the requisite legislative amendments to give full effect to this resolution to ensure continuity, stability, and the sustained transformation of the nation. Noting that no notable steps have been taken to implement the above resolution, this conference hereby reaffirms this resolution and directs the Secretary for Legal Affairs and the Minister of Justice to ensure that before the 23rd National People's Conference, this resolution of the party is fully implemented.
One thing that we need to realize is at the present moment, there is really nothing we can do to challenge this whole resolution. The steps, as said, have not even begun. You know, it's still in talk. What I find very difficult is to understand is how the opposition have all of a sudden decided to unite and defend the Constitution. The same Constitution that they have left being violated each and every time when Zanu PF rigs elections. It's still the same constitution. Why defend it now when you could have defended it, for example, when there was a military coup, the elections in 2018, the elections in 2023, they never stood up and said, what has just transpired here is a breach of our constitution. It's not aligned with our constitution. They've never spoken about that. And now all of a sudden, this here is something that is very, very real and is, it's so dangerous that they have to step in. You have to then look to say, hold on, why are they fighting so hard for this particular, incident? And then you see to say, oh, okay, if 2030 goes through, there is no 2028 elections. There is no more way to the gravy train. This is why they have to fight. So it's not about me and you or protecting the constitution. Oh no. It is about what they stand to gain or what they stand to lose if we do not have 2028 rigged elections. That's it. That's it. They've not addressed the violations that SADC has spoken about that happened during the 2023 elections. And it's not the first time that SADC, AU, EU, and all other observer missions have spotted irregularities with our elections, such that there are violations against our constitution. They have never ever spoken about those violations to the constitution. For years and decades, they've never spoken about it. The only reason they are speaking about this one is because once there is no 2028 election, they will not be getting away into the gravy train. They will be missing out on the perks that Zanu PF gives out. The cars, the land, the traveling expenses, the monies for participating in rigged elections. That is the truth. So it is not about love and let's protect the constitution. It's let us protect our own interests. This is why I say we have got the most corrupt, useless, and incompetent opposition out there.
What I think should also be emphasized here is the fact that Mnangagwa, on record, maintains that he is not interested in staying on beyond 2028. Here he is giving that statement at a meeting with editors.
I need a bit of help here to understand you clearly. I know the whole country needs you to pronounce yourself clearly. You have said and you've restated this point that you leave when your term ends, or you know when you will leave, the day and time. But like my colleague here said, there's still a lot of confusion. There's the 2030, people were saying you should extend your term to 2030. Can you state and pronounce your position clearly for the whole nation, for the international community, for us, so that when we write our stories, we have the proper information? What is your opinion? When are you leaving, sir?
In fact, you are putting it very clear. Very clear. That I have 2 terms, and these terms are very definite. And I'm so democratic. when they come to an end, I'll step aside and my party will elect my successor. That is as clear as day. Those who have other imaginations of the democratic society for people to dream. But facts will take place.
I think his argument there, and he has restated the same position several times. This is just a bolt hole for him. Because at the end of the day, if nothing comes of the ED2030, he can turn around and say, I told you I never had any intentions to participate. On the other hand, it will be very naive for us to assume that because he has said he has no intention to remain in office, he will honor that word. In 2017, he got into power on the cocktails of a military coup. I think that is a more serious violation of the Constitution than him using Parliament to extend his stay in office. He has done worse things than amending the Constitution to extend his stay in office. So on that point, we should not flatter ourselves and think, oh, because he has said he's a Democrat, he's not going to extend his rule. If he really wanted, if he was serious, he would have told his followers that this issue of him staying on is nonsense, and would have put an end to it. He did not. But like I said, it still serves his purpose. Because even if at the end of the day, he refuses to accept it, the point would have been made, and I think Ben was trying to emphasize it also earlier on, that the nation has spent all this time between 2023 and 2028 focusing on this ED2030 agenda, when they should be focusing on making sure that 2028 elections are free, fair, and credible. And if they are not, what can they do? That is where we should be focusing on, and not this decoy, ED2030.
No, it is quite unfortunate that we still have this Zanu PF rope or noose around our necks when we had the best opportunities to finally get rid ourselves of Zanu PF once and for all. And the problem still comes down to our opposition. They have let us down, and they continue to let us down. What is so discouraging is that the people of Zimbabwe still seem not to get just the basics. I mean, this is not rocket science. If we had implemented the reforms necessary to finally have free, fair, and credible elections, Zanu PF would have been long gone and dead. That is obvious, because Zanu PF would never win any free, fair, and credible election. Never, ever. It is even said that even if Zanu PF compete with the donkey would have won. The problem is that we have now an opposition that has tasted from the table or from the den of thieves. Zanu PF has been very, very good and very generous with their bribes. And these are so irresistible that the opposition have to participate no matter what. All this, we are defending the Constitution, is all nonsense. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it's all nonsense. The Constitution has been violated each and every single time. Why is this situation different? It's different because it affects their gravy tray. It affects their pockets. It affects their freebies. The opposition has been participating in rigged elections for one purpose and one purpose alone. What Zanu PF gives out at the end of the day. And many of the opposition members have said the exact same thing. That it is greed that has been driving them forward. They have confessed, they have not refused. The likes of David Colton, Tendai BT has said it at one point. Even Nelson Chamisa has said that we need to talk about the reforms. But before he finishes that statement, he's already declaring that he will win the next election. That's the problem. We have a corrupt, incompetent opposition that is just greedy for the next bacon, and they do not care about you, me, and the Constitution. And that is a fact.
Here is Professor Maduku's take on this ED 2030. His stance does make sense, in the sense that there is no point in pretending that the opposition can take on Mnangagwa on this issue because they've got nothing to go by. Sorry, got the wrong one.
Term limits are actually imposed to limit very good presidents. In fact, that is the reason for term limits. Term limits were invented to ensure that a person would not remain in office merely because they are doing well. That's if you go to the country that did that first and foremost, as the Americans. 4 years, 4 years. They don't look at how good a president is, which is why some of the best presidents in that country have had to leave. So term limits are for good presidents. You don't need a term limit for a poor president who obviously be removed in an election. So that's the first point to note. Then in terms of why we are saying it's impossible, of course, they have to go through the parliamentary process. Let's assume that they get a 2/3 majority to amend the provision that says that the president's term is 5 years. They will then need a referendum. But that referendum depends on what it is that they are proposing. If they are proposing that a president will remain in office by merely extending the term, they are not even allowed to make that proposal. It will still be unconstitutional. Parliament itself cannot do so. So it depends on what they are doing. I'm saying President Mnangagwa was elected to serve up to 2028. And the people who did that were the people, not a political party or parliament. Parliament was also elected at the same time. So regarding getting a mandate from the people, Parliament and the president, they stand at the same level. No one can say like the president cannot simply say, I want to extend the term of Parliament. That is not possible. nor can Parliament say, I want to extend the term in office of the president. They must all allow a new election in 2028. So that kind of proposal cannot even be taken to a referendum. The only proposal that can be taken to a referendum is where you want to say that perhaps you want to increase that from now on, presidents will serve for 7 years or for 8 years or for whatever. That will have to be obviously be taken to a referendum. Then there's a provision, everyone knows it, which says that whatever amendments are made, they cannot benefit the president or the person who is in office at the time. That will be another impediment. Yeah,
I think the most important point to note here is that Maduki is right. The amendment that Zanu PF is exploring right now is somehow to extend Mnangagwa's stay in office for another 2 years. That they can do using Parliament. But extending the Parliament itself, those who were elected, to extend their stay in office beyond 2028, they cannot do that. And in this particular case, the other point that should be made clear here is, as much as Zanu PF as a party can have their own discussion on such matters, until we see them coming up with the proposed amendment, be it amending the constitution or just Parliament trying to extend Mnangagwa's stay in office, we'll just be speculating. And why would we want to spend our time speculating on something that we don't know, when we already have something that we have and we should be defending? The issue of making sure 2028 is not a repeat of 2023, where Zanu PF rigged the elections. And so far, that is an important issue, because up to now, Zanu PF has not implemented even one token reform since 2023. People should be concerned. Why are you not implementing reforms? That is the point. That is where our fight should be, and not fighting on something that we cannot be sure what is going to happen. Nobody really knows. Everything is up in the air. So that is another problem that should be addressed here.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think you've put it across, so beautifully. This is just a plot to keep us guessing and preoccupied and forget about the main problem. And let it be said that, and let me remind the people of Zimbabwe, SADC and many other international observers have warned Zanu PF that this problem of rigged elections cannot keep on going on. They have since put their foot down. Now, what is left is for us to join them and to show that we have confidence in what they are saying and we are part of what they are saying. Because the moment we go ahead and continue to wallow in our mud, the more of the frustrated they are going to be with us and not Zanu PF. This is the point that we have reached. We have been given a lifeline. We need to hold on to it. No one will hold on to that for us. And I believe SADC made a very, very big proclamation and stance by coming out bold and straight up with Zanu PF. And it shook Zanu PF, such that Zanu PF decided to throw in a decoy, knowing that their opposition friends will come and, take the nation in the other direction. Yet the real problem is the problem with rigged elections. If we had solved the problem of rigged elections, there would be no 2030, there would be no Zanu PF period. It is the opposition that are sustaining Zanu PF. That is the truth. The opposition pretend to be fighting in our corner. Yet from the back, they're throwing cheap shots. We have to wake up as the people of Zimbabwe. Our problem is not 2030. 2030 can or might not happen. But what will definitely happen is Zanu PF will rig any upcoming election, especially the 2028 election, and they must be stopped. And we should stand with what the international observers have said, that we need to fix certain issues with how we conduct our process. And from there, we can finally put a nail to Zanu's coffin.
We just heard what Maduku says. He is one of the opposition leaders. But let's also hear what other leaders like Tendai Biti are saying on this ED2030 agenda.
That is to say, 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate. It must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote. There's a second problem. The Constitution then says, when you change this Constitution and you remove the term limits, it doesn't benefit the incumbent.
It benefits the next.
It benefits the next. But you can change that provision.
Same process.
Yeah, we call it the Abdoulaye Wade provision. Because President Abdoulaye Wade amended the Constitution for a third time, and Senegalese said, it can't benefit you. And he lost at that stage. And that's why President Sall came in. And as fate as it, as you know, President Macky Sall also tried to change the Constitution to benefit him. Yet he came through a process of rejecting a third term agenda. Right. That's why you can't trust people. But anyway, to come back to the legal process, another referendum is required now to change the constitutional provision that says you can't benefit. That's when we will see Trababal's true colors, because all along you'll be saying, I don't want Vandova Akuda. Now when he says, now the Akuda, the constitution has to go to a referendum for the second time. Baba, pakaipa. Tusangana makomu. Tusangana kwa Chendabwe. Tusangana ku Dotito. Tusangana ku Eskodini. Tusangana ku Binga. Tusangana ku Cholochu. He can't win those referendums. He cannot win those referendums.
Okay.
So to put it very crudely, the idea of a third term agenda is fraught with such legal landmines that you would have to be so ambitious, so insane, so drunk, or both to ever think that it can actually carry out and see the light of the day.
I think what is the take home there is the fact that he's admitting that for him to change the constitution is going to be an uphill struggle, which he cannot win. Mnangagwa, that is. So if we accept that, one then says, so why are you spending all your time fighting a battle that you know Mnangagwa will never win? And like I said before, a battle that Mnangagwa may never even want to fight. This is a decoy. He wants you to spend all your time, all your energy, all your focus on stopping ED2030. And at the end of the day, what have you got? Yes, you may get the victory you want. You may have stopped him. But meanwhile, you have taken your eyes off the 2028 elections. You are going to participate in the 2028 elections without even one single reform implemented. And Zanu PF is able to rig those elections. This is where the problem is. This is a decoy that has been thrown, and the usual suspects have swallowed the bait, the hook, the line, and the sinker. They can't even spit it out. They are hooked, truly. We are not going to see the opposition drop this issue of ED2030. They're caught. One of the reasons why actually they are caught is that they do not want to discuss the issue of implementing reforms, because it takes us back to 2008 to 2013. That was when the opposition, the likes of Tendai Biti, had the golden opportunity to implement the reforms. And they failed to do so. Why? Because they are corrupt and incompetent. So the issue of free, fair, and credible elections, why has it not been resolved? It's not only up to Zanu PF. The opposition too have played their part. When they had the opportunity to implement the reforms, they failed to do so. And so they too do not want the issue of reforms, free, fair, and credible elections discussed. They don't want to discuss with their supporters. Chamisa, when he announced that he's coming back into politics, what he said is that we are going to resolve this issue of disputed elections. What he didn't say is how. He would talk about we need to make sure that elections are not disputed. Yes, we have had the problem of disputed elections. Zanu PF has rigged elections for the last 46 years in counting. You had the opportunity to implement the reforms to stop them rigging the elections. the golden opportunity during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, you failed to implement even one reform. But you'll never get Chamisa, Tendai Biti, and others talking about those issues because they know that that was their golden opportunity and they messed it up. For complete sake here, it will be interesting to note that our friend Tendai Biti was in the GNU of 2008 to 2018. He and other senior MDC leaders got farms from Zanu PF. Here is a recent interview, somebody revealing that reality.
Bhazi rikafira musango munhu asina kwaari kuenda bhazi mumu anofara kuti ndo patopumba pake nditori nevamwe vangu pana munhu anorwadziwa nekurara musango munhu ane kumba
taibadana kumba kwangu
amana kumba gumbezi rangu reriya mana so but munhu asina imba hatete kurara musango. So opposition inomake sure kuti vanhu vaya vawane minda. But may he so rest in peace vatsvangirai prazi ravo vanga vainaro Chamisa anaro
ane famu here
kana azoramba ndoenda newe
riri kupi
ane famu
ribi
I know madress emunhu anetsa kuti focha but anaro chakudza off camera.
Okay,
ane mine ane makasel.
Yeah,
yes. Biti ane prazi hauna kumboona here picture yabiti achitenga mombe kuna Temba Mliswa dzekuisa kuprazi. One of the biggest beef producers in the Matabeleland region, the Washman Ngwe.
Okay,
yes, ane prazi ana utenga beneficiary land reform. But what they did is to discourage their people from acquiring my farms because vaiza kuti munhu akaona something chapiwa nehurumende haachapikisa.
Are you for real, Mr. Ganesha?
Nomubvunza Washman Ngwe kuti haasi kuita beef here, producer beef here paprasi. Tonyaendanetsa naupo waching'ono gore rere. Handiti kuti stand yaupo waching'ono standard ine painogumira. But vakatotaura nehurumende nemasabhuku ikaextendwa because aita god.
In short, the people of Zimbabwe should be careful of some of these opposition leaders who have taken up this ED2030 agenda as the #1 issue facing the nation. They have their own agenda. They don't want free, fair, and credible elections. They don't want the issue of making sure we have free, fair, and credible elections discussed because of what they have done themselves. So allowing the nation to discuss, to dwell on a side issue, and then when it comes nearer the 2028 elections, they will tell their supporters, no, we are going to win this. Serves their purpose beautifully. And we should not fall for it. Ben, do you want to give your concluding remarks?
Indeed, we have a choice to make. I mean, it is only human to make choices after all. We have most of our political actors calling for 2030 fight for the constitution, where we really cannot fight at the present moment because our hands are tied. We have to wait until Zanu PF makes the move, if they make the move, and when they make the move. But it may be too late when it comes to 2028. We would have to participate in rigged elections. and continue until 2033. So we really have to look at the fact that it's a hard choice to make. But what I know and I think is the best solution is we take the route which SADC and all other international observers out there have taken, where we tell ZANU to the face that we are tired of rigged elections and we play our part in stopping ZANU PF from rigging elections. And how do we stop that? By stopping ourselves first from participating in rigged elections. That is the first step. So I say, if there's going to be no reforms, there should be no elections. We should not be participating in those elections. And we stand and we fight now more than ever. The fight should be now, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Like I said at the beginning, ED2030 Agenda is a decoy. In the true Zanu PF Mozambique syndrome, modus operandi mode. And the usual suspects have swallowed the bait, the hook, the line, and sinker. When you hear the likes of Tendai Biti saying they are stopping amending the Constitution is impossible, and we are going to do everything. Tito, Gwanda, God knows where else is going to do to stop it, to campaign to stop it. One is going to ask, you're prepared to go to all those lengths to stop the amending of the Constitution. And yet, when you had 5 years to implement the democratic reforms, which would have ended the Zanu PF dictatorship, we will not be talking about Mnangagwa. Zimbabwe will be a healthy and functioning democracy right now. We will not be talking of Mnangagwa being a dictator. You did nothing. And even if you do succeed, what will that help Zimbabwe? All you will have stopped Mnangagwa continuing in power beyond 2028. Will that stop another dictator coming in? A Zanu PF dictator coming in, somebody else? Because as long as Zanu PF is able to rig the elections, the dictatorship itself will continue, will survive. What we have been saying is we don't want to repeat the mistake we made in 2017, where all we managed to do is remove one dictator only for another dictator to come in, because we had failed to end the dictatorship itself. The task is stopping Zanu PF rigging 2028 elections and perpetuating the dictatorship. I must emphasize here that it is too late to get any meaningful reforms implemented now, between now and 2028. So the only realistic thing we can aim for now, and we should be aiming for now, is making sure that Zanu PF does not rig those elections and get legitimacy. And that we can achieve by making sure that the likes of Nelson Chamisa does not con millions of his followers to participate in flawed elections on the basis of yet another lie. Chamisa has announced that he has come back into politics. And the number one reason why he is back into politics is because he wants to tell his supporters to participate in 2028 with no reforms. That should be our task. And we should focus on that. If Zanu PF rigs 2028 elections and get away with it, we, you, me, and every Zimbabwean out there cannot say we didn't have the opportunity to stop it. We did. We can stop it. We can stop Chamisa conning millions of his followers participating in those flawed elections. And we should not be sidetracked, distracted by the ED2030 agenda. Because like I said, even if we stop him, we'll get another Zanu PF dictator. So nothing would have accomplished nothing. And if we stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, and even if Mnangagwa succeeds in bribing parliament, which he can easily do, to change the law so that he is allowed to stay in without changing the constitution, without requiring going into a referendum. If Zanu PF does not win the 2028 elections, the party will be forced to go into another GNU. A GNU is not a dictatorship. And therefore then Mnangagwa will find himself in a situation where he is the dictator, but with no dictatorship. And the GNU, if they're rejected, Zanu PF fails to win those elections, the GNU itself, the composition itself, will not necessarily mean that it'll be Zanu PF and the opposition as in 2008 and 2013. It will be composed of entirely different individuals. Mnangagwa will not be a dictator in a GNU. That is the fact that we've got to accept. So I reiterate the point. ED2030 agenda is a decoy. And you should be smart enough to realize it. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us this evening. I hope you'll be able to do it again. And in future, if you want to join us, please use the link that we were showing at the bottom of the screen a few times before this. And I'll show it again just for the sake of completeness sake. And you're welcome to join us, and we'll love to hear your views on some of these issues. That link is valid on Saturday and Sundays, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Hope you'll be able to join us one of these weekends. Thank you very much again. Have a good day.